is going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome to Week 5, the NFL Pick 6 show. I'm your host, Dean. That's Dean7904. If you want to get all technical, that is the daily fantasy handle around the industry. How this goes down, the NFL Pick 6 show. How does this show work? We pick three games we focus on. We break it down every single possible angle. We tell you everything we like in that game, the three games that are really popping as far as this week on the main slate. The main slate, unfortunately, we're being deprived of the Rams and the Seahawks. Unfortunately, we're being deprived of Buffalo, Kansas City. They will be phenomenal showdown slates. No Indy, Baltimore, Sunday, that's Monday night. And no, this is probably a nice thing. We don't have to deal with Kyle Pitts in the main slate. No Jets, no Falcons. That's England's problem. That's London's problem. After we talk about the three main games in the slate, then we run it back, talk about our favorite players at each position. Do want to say what up to chat? What up, chat? Do you subscribe? Turn on notifications. Most people watch this show on a replay, but there are some. I got my eye on the chat there. And if you happen to mention some of the players, if we're talking about quarterbacks, say, what about this guy? I'll do my best to shout out and see what two of the absolute best experts in the business, their opinions as far as Week 5 DFS, Rich Hribar of Sharp Football Analysis. Rich, how are things in your world?
I'm doing real good. 5 weeks in, we flipped the calendar to October. Bye weeks will start next week. I will say though, it's going to be a long Sunday because we've got that game of the week, Bills Chiefs on Sunday night, but then we're starting real early in the morning. I know it's just Jets Falcons, but we'll be there watching it. So it's going to be a marathon on Sunday.
Are we going to be there watching it?
I am. I mean, you don't have a TV that doesn't have red zone. So, I mean,
that's got to be on like NFL Network or something like that, or Amazon, right?
It's kind of a fun game. We saw Zach Wilson, when he stays upright, complete 4 or 5 passes, 20 yards deep. Also, Ryan, his A.dot changed 12.5 air yards per attempt. That makes it somewhat fun. Also, like, they rigged those London games to give the crowd a fan pleaser. So now imagine 2 years removed, they got to pump this thing up. So I would expect the fewest DPIs we've ever seen in our lifetime.
I do like the conspiracy theory that they do the best. I mean, look, if we're really trying to market the game, though, what are we doing to give them Jets Falcons? That's the best.
Well, we give them the Jaguars. Like, the Jaguars are their home team, right? Like, so they don't have a Jaguars game.
There's no guarantee Urban would make that flight to London. They had to change it to the Jets
or back. He might not make it back. They're just going to leave.
Do the Jaguars have a London game this year? I assume they do.
I'm guessing they do, but they seem to have one every single season, I suppose, right? And their owner has ties. Doesn't he have like a football team over there? He's got a club. Yeah. All right. So, that was John Daigle. You guys know John Daigle from NBC Sports. A good football show podcast. Catch that on the iTunes, I presume. Anywhere you can go find podcasts. Yes.
It is good. Hopefully, and yes, iTunes and Spotify. Off a week that I got slapped upside the head, and I actually struggled initially to sleep Sunday night because I thought even in having Tyreek Hill and fading Derrick Henry with confidence on FanDuel, I was like, how could I still have been so wrong around that? But then the next day I saw the results just to see naked Kirk Cousins take down the juke, the $1,500 entry on DK, to see in these 3-man bigger tournaments, naked Sam Darnold with Dalton Schultz and Zeke runbacks. And then also the Millie winner didn't have Tyreek Hill in his lineup. And then I remember DFS stupid and everything actually wasn't right. I had the right process. I was just wrong in the results.
That is amazing. I didn't realize that.
It was a wild week.
Yeah, Cordell Patterson week happened again, and he was somehow pretty chalky on FanDuel, and I just missed that. I did not get the memo. I didn't realize people were going to be playing him a ton, and
he wasn't even cheap either. He was $6K or something.
Odell Beckham got steamed throughout the week too. He ended up being 40% in the high stakes.
I'm still mad at Baker Mayfield for that terrible throw. I don't want to talk about it. You live in Cleveland, right, Hribar? Seriously, I said this on Twitter the other day, and I went a little rant about it. But it's he's got the best agent in the world, right? He's got commercials all around America, not just Cleveland, locally, everywhere. He's a bottom 10 quarterback in the league. How good is his agent? Is my question as far as Baker Mayfield.
I mean, it was rough, man, watching him leave all those throws on the field there. I mean, Odell Beckham could have had a monster game. I'm going to tell myself the process was right. It definitely was not. I'm going to tell myself it was correct based on all the hollow. They weren't even prayer yards. Usually, the typical prayer yards are. It was I don't know, man. It was a Drew Lockian type performance. It was just insane.
That is not a compliment to one Drew Lock. Yeah, so the 3 main games are going to be focusing on batting first, leading off, and the best. That's what's left over. No KC, no Buffalo. That's going to be so much fun for Showdown for sure. But we're talking main slate only. The first game this week we're talking about here. I'll let you open it up here, Daigle. Philadelphia at Carolina. Carolina 4-point favorite. 44 and a half as far as the total. Carolina's defense was really good for the first 3 games, and they faced a real good offense in Dallas, and Dallas beat them up. There is a chance we get CMC this week. And if we get CMC this week, he's 8.7K on DK, which you get him less than 5 figures on DK, all his catches, assuming he's like a full go. You got to love CMC this week. What are your thoughts as far as this game?
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and start with the Panthers side then. And remember, this is the same coaching staff that after CMC missed 6 games last year, they didn't care at all. They brought him back in Arrowhead and jammed him 11 targets, over 20 touches, and then he got re-injured in the fourth quarter because, of course, they didn't care. But nonetheless, Sam Darnold's in my opinion, another good spot, just because we saw the Eagles crater the Falcons' pocket for a top 10 pressure rate in week 1. But since that time, it finished bottom 6 in pressure rate in every game since then. Eagles will also have run a majority zone coverage this year, and cover 2 and cover 3 is what Sam Darnold's eaten alive for 75% completion rate and 8.5 yards per attempt. The numbers are a little bit skewed because the Panthers are still getting an elite pass rush, the league's highest pressure rate, even though they failed to reach Dak Prescott, just so the Cowboys are too efficient in their play calling. And we'll talk about that a bit later. But even so, we have seen, and I'm sure Rich is going to talk about, Jalen Hurts and the Eagles side here, but we've seen that the Eagles have no issues in responding on offense, even in garbage time getting there. And so I think we'll get some pushback. And so it's another good spot for the Panthers offense to be in a favorable situation throughout the game.
Jump in here, Rich. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I like Darnold again. The thing about Darnold, you just have to worry about, he's living so fat on these rushing touchdowns, which are just insane. I mean, only Lamar Jackson has a higher percentage of his points that come from rushing than Sam Darnold, and it's just all touchdowns. I mean, literally the most rushing touchdowns for a quarterback through 4 games of a season since 1962, when it wasn't even football. Then it was just, I didn't even if they threw forward passes. The quarterback was just the best player in the field and just ran with the ball. I don't know what happened back then.
Better times then, because there was no red zone.
Yeah, I mean that's what you're just worried about. The Eagles definitely are a team that especially since Brandon Graham's not too, they've been really soft against the run the past 2 weeks. So I mean, there's definitely opportunity there. Obviously, we'd like for it to be kind of McCaffrey back to take full advantage of, because we saw when Chuba Hubbard played last week, he just didn't run any pass routes. I mean, they had Rodney Smith running all the pass routes, which was kind of pulled the wool on us a little bit. It wasn't even Royce Freeman. It was Rodney Smith was the guy running all the pass routes. So we didn't get there with Hubbard. Obviously, Darnold kept the RPO, which he should have kept it, and it was the perfect play call. So we got a call holding the bag there. But I mean, DJ Moore just continues to romp. So we can keep riding that. I mean, he's not really a guy we have to worry about seeing any man coverage this game. He's just going to eat it up through the zone. We almost got there, the flop lag with Robbie Anderson, but Sam Darnold also, he kind of had the same performance. It was like Baker throwing to Odell with Robbie A. I mean, none of his targets were catchable. He had a for sure touchdown that Darnold just completely sailed on him. But really, we don't have to play any of these other guys because there really is no one else. I mean, Terrace Marshall is not doing anything. He's out there exercising a little bit. So, I mean, it's really just been DJ Moore just getting jammed with targets, and we can just sit on him.
Yeah, Marshall just not happening. He had 3 targets last week, 2 total yards, like you said.
That's 3 targets and 1 catch in a game. They trailed by 2 scores in the second half. That's like the net worst outcome.
Yeah, I had a little bit of him on some good lineups too. He kind of ruined him because I thought he was a cheap way to get exposure to that game.
Mm-hmm.
What about the Philadelphia side? Let's kind of jump over there. Are we seeing a change in the guard at running back? Is it going to be Hubbard's world? And not Hubbard. Sanders is kind of stepping aside for Gainwell, the rookie. And of course, the quarterback. I love Hurts because, the quarterbacks with legs give you that floor. Was it Levitan that tweeted it out? Every single start he's had at least 21 DK points, even garbage. He's out there. He's a garbage time hero. If they're losing by 30, he's still chucking. I appreciate that. My teams appreciate that. And I'm not. Well, do you have any reads here, Hribar, as far as this Carolina defense? Are they good? Are they not good? The sample's kind of weird. Soft teams at first. Dallas beat them up. I mean, are they kind of frauds somewhere in the middle?
No, I still think they're going to be an overall, good defense, but teams like the Cowboys are going to be good against all defenses. But I do think that they are definitely, a very talented defense, and they were a game for 2 quarters of that game. But the thing is, they're a little bit light on the defensive front, and the Cowboys, took that to advantage, in the power run game, and were able to beat them up on the inside. But I definitely think that they're going to be a problem here for this Eagles offensive line that is just going through it again, like last year. I mean, last year they played 14 different offensive line combinations. It was the most in the NFL. They've already lost both of their guards, presumably for the season. They've got Lane Johnson did not practice again today, I believe. Their left tackle, Malaitai's out. I mean, again, they just don't, the offensive line is just banged up again. And that's why we've seen them skew pass heavy because they really can't run the football very effectively. So they've really skewed pass heavy, even outside of game script. Like their pass rate over expectation is among the league's highest now. So that's why they've been airing it out a little bit. And, at the running back thing is a little interesting because I don't think it's as clear cut as people are making it out to be. We like Gainwell's usage in negative game script. They also are using him in the red zone a little bit, but he's still very light in terms of like bankable opportunity. I mean, he's run a route on just 35% of team dropbacks even last week. Like he just ran really hot in terms of targets per route run, which is fine because they're dialing up plays for him where he's one of the initial reads. But the usage is still very light. I mean, it still needs to be a lot higher before we get excited about him. And we need to also see him get like any type of traditional kind of carries. Like he's a guy that's getting carries when they're spread out, like he was at Memphis, kind of against light boxes. So it's kind of skewing a little bit of his efficiency too. But Sanders is still playing a lot more than him in terms of, snaps and even routes run. So I think he's still just a hold, if you're in your seasonal leagues, if someone wants to get aggressive, maybe you use him as one of those bargain up chips. You throw Gainwell in a little spice of something and you end up getting a player you really want or someone that's coming up. So I'm not ready to call it a changing of the guard. You're encouraged what you saw so far. But I also think this team really can't run well. And, I think it's gonna be a lot of volatility in terms of predicting when you're going to get the kind of Gainwell game or not.
And it's like you said, just the fact that they aren't running because they can't run, just 13 running back carries the past 2 weeks, skews it all for everyone except for Hurts, 39 and 48 pass attempts on top of his 8.5 carries per game in that time. And like Levitan's tweet you mentioned, Dean, Hurts has finished as a top 12 quarterback and 7 full starts dating back to last year. So he just seems to be safe when he's out there, no matter the game script.
And it's all scrambles too. Like it's crazy that like they've been so bad running the football and their offensive line is struggling, but they're not using like any RPO or design runs with Jalen Hurts. I mean, almost all of his carries are actual just scrambles. I mean, he leads the NFL with 19 scrambles, but he's just barely in the top 10 in designed rushing attempts, which seems pretty wild given their circumstances.
The Lane Johnson thing, that was kind of a surprise, and wasn't that was a personal issue, not an actual injury, I believe. Is that correct? Do you guys know?
I'm not 100% sure. I thought he had an actual injury before, and then
I thought he had a back injury. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and then today I thought was maybe more personal. Because they're going to get blitzed a lot this game. I mean, no one blitzes more than the Panthers. What's cool, though, is you don't mind when you blitz a quarterback like Jalen Hurts a lot, and he's seeing the blitz a lot. That's why you see him have so many scrambles, is because when you blitz a lot, you're typically playing either man coverage or the Panthers do a lot of zone blitzing. Like I said, out of that 3-3-5 looks. But you blitz a guy like Jalen Hurts, you leave the gate open. You can get some nice runs, if you don't get home, or you get past like that initial wave. He's not taking really any sacks at all, which is wild.
Yeah, I know you mentioned before about Kyler Murray, the same kind of deal. Like when you blitz him, he makes you pay for it, and it opens up potential for big plays if the secondary can't hold an extra second or two if he scrambles away. The favorite player to pair with Hurts, you could always play Hurts naked. I think you can play, he's one of those guys who can play naked, but if you're going to pair him with somebody, Daigle, who's your preference?
Oh, it's definitely Devonta Smith, who has at least 6 targets in every game, a 20% target share in 3 of his 4 starts, including last week's team high, and with double-digit targets. Like Dallas Goedert, oddly enough, is probably the next closest. He's the tight end 8 in PPR right now, but also like he's getting there strictly on efficiency because him and Zach Ertz are still basically mirroring one another in routes and targets. It really just comes down to who's going to luck box into the end zone to see who scores more between them. So I think Devonta Smith, and then, if you want to get really, really cute, if you're playing some low stakes recreational leagues, you take a chance on the air yards that Kez Watkins is getting. But other than that, it's really thin actually for, a team that has passed nearly 80 times or over 80 times the last 2 games.
We saw a guy like Cooper Kupp get a huge price hike. I'm looking around, same kind of deal with DJ Moore, fully justified, 7.9K now on FanDuel.
They finally changed their mind, huh? Because last year they didn't want to move his price at all.
So, like, is he priced out? Of course, you can always play him in tournaments. I don't know if he's quote unquote optimal anymore, but are you still comfortable paying 7.9 for more on FanDuel?
Me or Rich?
Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody, that's for the field.
I mean, he is the type of player that's getting that. Just to have over a 30% target share in the past 2 games, double-digit targets in 3 of 4 performances. He's been leading this team in targets like even before Christian McCaffrey and Dan Arnold went elsewhere. So, yeah, I think I'm comfortable with it. I haven't done build just yet with DJ Moore, but it's not a player I'm shying away from, certainly.
He is the 3rd most expensive receiver on the board. Again, this is main slate only. Devontae Adams, $300 in front. This is FanDuel specific for what it's worth. Justin Jefferson in between those Adams, and then DJ Moore at 7.9. But again, it's fully justified. He's been great, and a lot of good players are off the main slate too. There's no Kansas City, there's no Buffalo, so and you got to spend your funds somewhere. You don't have to, but you don't get any
Tyreek. No Tyreek, no Diggs,
no Kelsey, who was great last week,
no Cooper Kupp, no DK Metcalf.
Those are always the most fun slates because they're the wildest. Like you could justify paying down whenever Travis Kelsey and the GOAT Dawson Knox are not on the slate.
Oh man, I did not have Knox last week. Darren Waller is probably gonna be pretty popular because he's the next man up as far as your spend up on FanDuel, and FanDuel doesn't make it that hard to spend up on your tight ends as far as how the salary works. Anything else in this game, Hribar, or shall we move on to game number 2?
Nah, I think that's about it.
Just want to say hello to chat. What up, chat? Megan in chat said this guy's voice is hard to listen to. Who do you think? Which one of the 3? Who's got the hardest voice?
It's mine. It's definitely mine.
I mean, she may not like cartoon accents, so it may be me. Who knows?
I don't think it's. I don't think it's me. I don't know. I think it's me. It doesn't matter. What's up, Megan? Thanks for joining us.
Hi, jerk.
That's fine. Giants versus Dallas. 52 is the total. Dallas is a 7-point favorite, and like because of all those games, all those teams off the main slate here, Hribar. I think that Dallas is the de facto chalk. They're going to be super popular. Big total. There's, I think this is the biggest total on the board at 52. Saquon was phenomenal last week. He used a little overtime and like a wheel route for like 50 or 60 or 70 yards, whatever it was to kind of get there. But he got there in a tough matchup against New Orleans. And like he's a bell cow again. That's legit. Whatever sort of issues people had during draft season a month ago or so, those are gone for sure. But talk to you about the Cowboys first, and like they're going to be super chalky. And how much do you have to have of them?
Yeah, I mean, they're interesting because they've kind of been a team like kind of Daigle hinted at. They're calling a little bit of their games based on opponent. Kind of frustrating because they've been, very hyper efficient, and it's almost like very couple years ago, like Seahawkian. Dak has thrown for 237, 238, 188 yards the past 3 games, but he's made up for it. He's got a 15% touchdown rate the past 2 weeks. Like that's not something we don't want to live this way with Dak Prescott. We're going to need some more. I will say though, they could open up here because, 68% of the yardage allowed by the Giants has come via passing. That's only 16th in the NFL, but the past 3 teams Dallas has played have all been bottom 5 in that category. So we might get a little bit more of a mix here. Will the game script follow? We're gonna need the Giants to do their part. They're capable from what we've seen from the first month. They're also not capable too. We don't know what we're gonna get. But we would like to see a little more volume for Dak because we're not going to be able to live on this 15% touchdown rate, for a lot longer. I mean, I hate to be the sustainability guy, but it's just not going to happen. And also, we're going to see some oscillation here, I think, with the types of targets that we get. I know Daigle will want to talk about Dalton Schultz, but I mean, Dalton Schultz is luck boxing into a lot of things here. You have to believe that he's going to basically double both CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper's targets the rest of the way out, which I just don't think is something we're going to see happen. I mean, you're talking about CeeDee Lamb just 12% and 22% target shares last 2 weeks. Amari Cooper 16% and 13%. We're not going to see this over the big picture. There's just no way. Now, this offense definitely, if they add volume, could be good enough to sustain all these guys. We've seen it happen, but they're going to get Michael Gallup back too. So I do think that Schultz is a pretty clear sell high, especially at the tight end position where people are grasping at stuff. Same thing with like Mooney last week. Like Mooney's not going to double Allen Robinson in targets the rest of the season. So we'll need to go overboard in some of these situations. We have to look at the full context of who's not getting targeted too. And the Cowboys have 2 very superior players in the game of football right now than their tight ends that aren't getting the football the past couple of weeks. And I don't think that will be something that is very long-lived.
Daigle, your thoughts as far as Dallas? Is it better suited for the rushers, better suited for the passers? I suppose game script is going to factor in as well. And hey, if you want to go back to Dalton Schultz, do you want to say, hey, you know what? That touchdown regression, it's not coming. He's going to get the touchdown every single time he he gets a target. It's probably not going to happen. But
well, in redraft, it's just easier because the position is the 7th circle of hell. Like, it just doesn't matter. If someone's running routes, you put him out there. I will say, like,
will he be the highest owned tight end on this slate?
Ooh, I don't know. I think everyone's going to hit the George Kittle at some point.
Okay, so on FanDuel,
now with Lance, they won't. I don't think they'll get to him with Lance. But we're talking about that game, aren't we?
No, we decided Green Bay, Cincinnati instead. Listen, I like to appease everyone tuning in. Maybe there's some Packers fans. We don't talk about the Packers much. I just wanted to change it up a little bit.
Fair enough.
But the positional plays, though, will definitely lead off with San Francisco and Arizona. Anyways, Dean, I'm sorry. What was that?
I would just say, for what it's worth, currently, we record this on Wednesday night. News will for sure change. But currently, right now, the most highly owned and optimals tight end on DK is Evan Ingram because he's cheap.
Oh, get out of here.
They got to stop.
You guys did this last week.
It's a win. He was owned. He wasn't great.
I know, but I'm
the
saying
story of his career.
Yeah,
and
rostered, not great.
Yeah, there you go. On FanDuel, it's Waller because you have salary.
Schultz is 4.4 on DK, and what is he? And he's 6.2 on FanDuel. So I guess he's right in that strike zone where you have to pay for on FanDuel. On DK, he's going to be super chalky on DK. I mean, like, things can happen, but on Wednesday night at 4.4, considering how bad the Giants been the tight ends and this little heater he's been on, and I can't see any way he doesn't end up being really popular.
But you're saying it's kind of fluky. Like the results.
I mean, it is based on his usage. I mean, it is. I mean, the long-term bet on Schultz is betting against Lamb and Cooper.
And it's the 3 touchdowns that have happened without Michael Gallup, of course. Even since week 2 without Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb actually has as many targets as Schultz. You just wouldn't know that since CeeDee Lamb the past 2 weeks has been the wide receiver 55 and wide receiver 80 in fantasy points. And so if you're betting on, if we're trying to get ahead of a player, like CeeDee Lamb, of course, is the one to try to get ahead on, whereas Dalton Schultz is getting some good usage. Like this past week was the first time he finally separated from Blake Jarwin, who still had an 18-yard touchdown himself, but Schultz still ran 23 routes to Jarwin's 10, a little bit of separation considering they were mirroring one another and routes and targets before then. But overall, still, like, CeeDee Lamb is a potential first round pick in fantasy next year, whereas Dalton Schultz will never be that. So we want to bank on one of the most talented players in the NFL correcting himself, especially if we guess the game script right for the Cowboys, since that's been an impossible feat so far.
Well, this game is cool because you can stack it both ways, right? Like you can do Dak and the Dallas receivers, whether you pick your flavor. You can do Lamb and Schultz. If you want to do a double stack, you can do that, and you can play Saquon, or you can do the inverse. You can play Giants pass catchers and Zeke.
Okay, what Giant pass catcher? Okay, go ahead. Do you want to play Kadarius Toney, the rookie? I saw.
I played him last week. It didn't work out, but I thought I was cool because I played him last week. And, it didn't really work out. But
he only had 2 fewer air yards than John Ross. You wouldn't have guessed it at the time since Ross was just running deep, but it was actually a good play. The question is Sterling Shepard going to play? Because 31 of Tony's 50 snaps came from the slot, and that's where Shepard was hogging before then. Remember, Shepard led this team in targets with over a 22% target share at every full game he played in weeks 1 and 2. So that's my big concern for Kadarius Toney. But if Shepard's out, on DK, that floor and potential catch-up ceiling, it's definitely there in a game that we expect to shoot out.
He's $4K, which is a pretty appealing price. Worth noting, the DK prices for the Cowboy receivers, Cooper and Lamb, is much more appealing than the FanDuel prices for the Cowboy receivers. 6-1 for Cooper, 6-2 for Lamb. That's on DK. And on FanDuel, 7-1 for Cooper, 6-9 for Lamb. They're fine. Doesn't mean you can't play him. And also, again, I ran these optimals before the show. And again, remember, it's Wednesday night. So much stuff will for sure change, but it's just kind of worth noting at this point. Your optimal quarterback on DK this week is a 94% chance it's either Dak Prescott or Daniel Jones. A quarterback in this game, basically.
They're both awesome plays. Even Daniel Jones is currently the QB 6 in fantasy points per game, has the 3rd most carries among all quarterbacks. And it's another great spot, like we talked about for the Panthers offense last week, because Dallas has still allowed the 3rd most yards per play and 2nd most raw passing yards on the year. Now it's going to come down as Daniel Jones superhuman like last week, or does he become pumpkin Daniel Jones from last year? It's still something that I'm still scared to buy into, but so far, the Giants have led the league in no huddle rate. They are they're an interesting offense. Let's say that.
I was looking at Derek Carty, the blitz. If you look at his game level factors, as far as game plays, current projected game plays, we're expecting 128.8 plays in this game, which is the second most projected for the week. Tampa Bay, Miami, a little bit more for what it's worth. So yeah, expecting a lot of plays. That is important as far as the tempo. And just to get an idea, like the floor is Baltimore, Indiana, 115, Green Bay, Cincinnati, 117. So, the difference of, 15 plays, 14 plays, that can make it the world of difference. Hribar, talk to me about Saquon Barkley, because is he going to be kind of sort of somewhat lost in this slate? I don't know. He's been like, he was great against New Orleans, of course, using overtime that, pad his stats a little bit to some degree, wasn't really owned at all. People are going to play Henry over him almost definitely. I'd imagine playing against Jacksonville. We'll talk about that soon enough, I'm sure. What's your thoughts as far as Saquon?
Yeah, I mean, you got to feel good about how he's looked. He's got snaps have gone up every game, and then we've seen him using the passing game as 2 full games. I mean, he had 6 targets last week, 7 targets the week before. Could be a byproduct of injury, but they're using him incredibly. Listen, we don't do this very often. Jason Garrett called a great game last week. He had a great game plan.
Mm-hmm.
He had a great game plan. He effectively used Kadarius Toney. They stretched the field. He got Saquon out in space against a good run defense that's very good on the interior. The offensive line is playing good too. Now, it's not just Daniel Jones, who only has 2 turnovers and one's on a Hail Mary this year. Andrew Thomas is playing well again, not again, for the first time. There are some things going right here for the Giants, for as bad as their record has been. And, if they don't punt away that game, to the Falcons, and, maybe they're 2-2 and it stands out a little bit more. But Jason Garrett for 1 week, we got to give Jason Garrett a little bit of credit, man.
This week, it's a Jason Garrett revenge game?
I mean, maybe. I guess we can call it that. But I mean, listen, Daniel Jones ran really hot last week, though, too, even outside of the game plan. Obviously, 10 yards for pass attempts for a career high 400 yards. His pass completion over expectation was 10.3%. It was the second highest in the NFL last week. His expected completion rate was ahead of just 4 quarterbacks. So, I mean, he definitely ran hot. We haven't seen this kind of version of Daniel Jones, right? Like where he runs hot like this. Usually it's typically him like running in like an RPO or doing something weird to get there. I mean, it was a legitimate like Daniel Jones passing heater last week, and we've not had many of those, through 2 1/4 seasons. And then you're still getting a sprinkling of rushing yards. So he's run for 27 or more yards in all 4 games. So that's still kind of in the back pocket to give you kind of that, upside to maybe have an extra passing touchdown. This Dallas team they're giving up chunks of yards. They're just getting a bunch of turnovers, lead the NFL in turnovers. They did it again last week, but they are giving up a bunch of yards. And even for as good as Trayvon Diggs has been in the turnovers, I mean, he still has allowed the 5th most yards in coverage this year, and he's giving up big plays when he does give up plays. 18.2 yards per catch in his coverage, but he's making big plays to kind of counter off that. So it's been a little bit of give and take, and you'll take that obviously for the Cowboys. You'll give up all the 18-yard catches you want to have a dude have 5 turnovers in 4 games. But there is some upside still. It's not like he's going to erase someone either, though.
Barkley also ran the 4th most routes among all running backs last week, and the Cowboys have encouragingly allowed the most receptions to running backs on the year. So you have to see where ownership comes in, but definitely, a spot to play him if he comes in under roster compared to Daniel Jones.
He seems like an awesome run back for sure. The release of Jalen Smith, does that matter? Does that mean anything as far as, is there anything to react to that, or just
he played a season low in snaps last week? Like they should have got out of the contract before June 1, but they decided to do it right now.
All right. You got anything else here, or shall I move on here, Daigle?
Don't play Evan Ingram.
That's about it.
I mean, we live in the world of a salary cap, and he's kind of sort of somewhat cheap. And
we talked about this though last week on the tight ends, how they're priced on DK. Like, you just don't have to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure I said I don't want to do it, and I ended up playing some, and I split them with who did I play? The cheapie on Seattle, who was worse, I believe.
Oh, Disley.
Yeah, Disley was not good. I'm not sure if that's Thursday night, so we don't have to worry about him. That's why I was thinking about Disley. I'm like, not in the main slate. Forget about that. Who cares? We'll talk about that Thursday night, as far as the showdown.
Well, just don't play Evan Ingram.
This is the week, man. He's due. Green Bay at Cincinnati, 51 is the total. Cincinnati's getting 3. Wednesday night, are we certain? Do we know Mixon's out? We're assuming Mixon's out, right?
I'd bet on it.
I would bet on it too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, then I saw the internet doctors were projecting them to be out for at least another week or 2 or something like that. For what it's worth, it seems like he's not going to play. DK didn't take note of this because they put Samaje Perine at $4K, the stone minimum. They raised the floor from $3K for their running backs not too long ago. He is pricier on FanDuel. I'm trying to pull up his FanDuel price right now. I think it's like 5.5 or so, which is still fine. How much do we need Samaje Perine on DK? I guess it kind of matters how the rest of the week opens up as far as value, but right now he feels like a good value play. Hribar, do you think he gets the large majority of those carries? How much does Chris Evans eat in on that, or is Perine just going to be the workhorse?
Yeah, I think we'll see Chris Evans working long down and distance. Probably, I think it's a good bet that he will. I will say on FanDuel, he's only 200 cheaper than Damian Williams. So I don't think we'll see. I think a lot more people want to go to Damian Williams, who we'll probably talk about at some point in the near future on this program. So I don't think that he'll get a lot more. Like a lot of people are going to be just drawn to him. And last week, even with Mixon, the Bengals were finally a little more aggressive on early downs for the first time this season, after kind of being a little bit more slower paced. I mean, my one concern about this game is that both these teams do not like to operate with any urgency. So we could see that. I mean, the Packers have been notorious slow for multiple years now since LaFleur's been there. And part of that is due to efficiency, but we've seen even this year with Aaron Rodgers having that expected regression the opening month, they are very, very slow again. They're 23 in offensive plays per game. The Bengals are 31st. Like I said, they did kind of ramp it up a little bit last week, and without Mixon, maybe they're encouraged to do some more of that this week. Now it looks like they're going to get T. Higgins back too this week. But Joe Burrow's been hyper efficient. He had that one just weird game that against the Bears. So it's an outlier, but outside of that Bears game, he's averaged 9.6 yards per attempt or more in all 3 games. He already has 4 passing touchdowns on deep targets over 15 yards downfield. As a rookie, he had just 1. So he's already eclipsed that. We're getting some big plays out of this offense. They're not getting to the red zone a lot because they're generating more big plays. But Joe Burrow has been hyper efficient. I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at this Packers defense that is already 22nd in the NFL the opening month in passing points allowed per game. And they face Jameis Winston, Jared Goff, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Ben Roethlisberger. Not exactly a daunting rogues gallery of quarterbacks that have the kind of acumen that Joe Burrow even has. Joe Burrow, by no means like a top 6 locked in guy, but definitely multiple rungs better than those options on a weekly fantasy basis. And then we have this injury to Jair Alexander. They still might not have Kevin King back. And one thing the Bengals do have is an abundance of riches at the wide receiver position if you're short on DBs.
Your favorite amongst the bunch is a Chase?
I think, man, it's tough. It's a little bit of whack-a-mole with these guys because T. Higgins is, since he came in the league, he led all rookies in end zone targets and targets inside the 10. And that was his role immediately the first 2 games. He had an end zone target, end zone touchdown the opening 2 weeks before injury. Now he's coming off injury, so maybe that's a little bit concern. Chase has been living a little bit off those big plays, but I would say for a ceiling, definitely Chase would be kind of the run back for an upside in terms of stacking.
Give me your favorite, Daigle, and your thoughts as far as Perine.
It's Chase, and I have to see how Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins ownership shakes out. Since T. Higgins was limited on Wednesday, we may get him here. And just the way this offense works, at least through the first 3 games, since they were the 9th highest team in run play rate and neutral game script, except last Thursday, for the first time, they were the 2nd highest pass play rate and neutral game script. And so the way it worked for the first 3 games was we had to sacrifice one of them. And Chase was living off touchdowns, even though a couple of those games he did lead the team in targets because he's that talented. He could score a touchdown on 4 targets and be just fine. But typically we were giving away one of them because there wasn't enough volume. But suddenly, if there is going to be volume, then it's probably Chase and Higgins for me if all 3 of them play. Having said that, it presents a very good double stack situation to leverage off of Perine if you want to go that direction, because maybe they just changed the offensive game script anyhow without Joe Mixon and just passed more altogether, even though they weren't giving Joe Mixon targets anyways, but maybe they just don't run the ball much. So I do like the double stack in this situation to get off of Perine.
Talking about your thoughts as far as the Packers there, I clicked on one of your articles regarding season-long stuff, and I think you had, and obviously there's context to it, I think you had A.J. Dillon as a drop this week in your season-long, and he had 15 carries, but that was maybe because Jones fumbled the ball, maybe because they were mopping up a little bit. You just don't think Dillon's going to creep in too much as far as Aaron Jones, unless, of course, we get an injury there. Talk to me about that running back situation, and then, of course, Devontae Adams, he's good at football.
Well, I always provide the context because in those waiver wire columns, I'm writing for literally everyone, whether you're in a 4-man bench with 8 people in your league or the high stakes leagues that like we're all in Vegas. I'm trying to cover all my bases. And I describe in there, Dylan is just a contingency option. He's literally just a backup. He got 8 of his 15 carries this past week in the fourth quarter when the team led 27-10. So the usage didn't change at all unless the schedule makers went back and gave the Steelers the Packers every single week, making it easier to play Dylan every single week since they just rolled the Steelers. So that's the way I look at it. But in their previous 2 games, excluding their disastrous week 1 loss to New Orleans, which skewed all their numbers for the year, Aaron Jones out-touched Dylan 44-14 and still has 100% of the team's carries inside the 10 and 5 yard line. So Jones is the play we want here if we're assuming a competitive game script. And we've seen that trickle down. Aaron Rodgers, 8 touchdowns, no picks in his last 3 games, as well as Green Bay's target tree since that week 1 debacle, since they've just been jamming Devontae Adams back to vintage Devontae Adams, 12.6 targets per game and a 39.4% target share since week 2. So it doesn't matter how we get this, but since the Bengals have allowed the 5th most receptions to opposing wideouts, like that's why it makes a sneaky situation to also double stack Rodgers if you want to go that way, or at least skinny stack with perhaps Adams, Robert Tonyan, or one of the other whack-a-moles with Bengals running back.
Randall Cobb, I guess, will be that one of the whack-a-moles there on the Green Bay side. And I just pulled it up. I was curious because I know he wasn't getting a ton of he wasn't being on the field all that much at the beginning of the season. First week, 26% of the snaps at 18%, 33%. Hribar, 46% of the snaps now for Cobb. That's Rodgers' guy. Maybe he lets you just hang out with him off the field. I don't know, but he was making a big deal. Like, I want that guy in this team. He finally fed up for 2 touchdowns last week. Is this a Schultz situation? That was goofy, and that was like weird variance. Maybe we can't expect that going forward.
I mean, he only ran a route on 64% of dropbacks, but interesting that Rodgers during the week last week said like he wanted to throw to him more and then did. We also had a situation a couple weeks ago where McVay said he was going to get Deshaun Jackson in the game plan and then did. Now he claims he's going to get Robert Woods targets on Thursday. So we'll see how truthful all these these whispers, the narratives that these guys are floating out there, how true they're coming. But Rodgers did say last week he was going to throw to him more, and he sure did with Valdez-Scantling out. Lazard did run a pass route on 95% of the dropback, so he was still out there, getting his cardio in if you want to go back there and just take a shot. We've seen him have, spike weeks before. He's definitely not a guy I would recommend anything outside of, single digit, ownership, but, definitely is a guy that he's gonna be on the field. Definitely looking at this game too, the Bengals don't really rush the passer a lot. And that's been the Packers' initial problem. They, obviously haven't had David Bakhtiari, still recovering on the PUP. They lose Corey Linsley, who was the number 1 pass blocking center last year, and Eldon Jenkins has been out the last couple of weeks, and it looks like he probably is going to miss this week again. But the Bengals are 24th in pressure rate, so they haven't really been getting to the quarterback. They nuked the Bears and they nuked Ben Roethlisberger, but Kirk Cousins completed 75% of his passes and had 22 fantasy points against him. Trevor Lawrence completed 70% of his passes on Thursday, and he had 8.5 yards per pass attempt in that game. They just, James Robinson had 2 short touchdowns. So there wasn't a huge fantasy game for Lawrence. I mean, this could be one of Rodgers' better outlooks in terms of matchups so far to open the year and not getting some of that pressure where this offensive line has been overmatched by defensive fronts like what the 49ers have and what the Pittsburgh Steelers have. So we could see him kind of, bounce back and have one of these spike weeks to make it worth kind of, using him and Adams and running it back with some of these Bengals wideouts.
I feel like Adams will be someone that's going to be popular once again because we keep talking about
just
it.
Default,
as far as, he's the guy that's elite, and you're probably going to have money for it because there's going to be enough value plays to make stuff work. As always,
and no Kelsey.
No Kelsey, no Mahomes, no Allen, no Diggs.
That's why Tanyan's pretty interesting. Fresh off season highs and snaps, targets, and routes run, 82% of Rodgers dropbacks. So you got a luck box of TD, but again, it's a week you can get queued at tight end.
Yeah, I forgot the MVS being out, and if he was running on the field like 60% of the time or so. So, everybody, Lazard got a little bit of a bump, Cobb got a little bit of a bump, as well as Tonyan as well. St. Brown, not that you're playing St. Brown, but he ran a few more, at least on the field. I don't have routes in front of me, but I assume he ran some routes out there as well. All right, I believe that's it. Anything else, Daigle, or shall we move on position by position?
I would just keep in mind that the build is going to be the same. If everyone pays down for P. Ryan, they're also paying up for Derrick Henry. So just keep that in mind and try to be creative around it.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to have the money for it because P-Run is 4K on DK. And if he puts up 15 points, you can survive that. Obviously, you can make up the difference elsewhere and just, live in the mid tier for sure. All right. Do you want to tell a chat? Yeah, throw out some names out there. If you guys are hanging out with us, like, subscribe, turn on notifications, do our best to get, whatever you guys are throwing out there. Some quarterbacks, some receivers, some tight ends. As we're on the topic, feel free to throw them out. I'm going to keep my eye over there here for the next 25 minutes or so, give or take. Before we do that, I do want to tell you guys about Jock Market. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market. That is the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. You buy, you sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% deposit match up to $50. Use the promo code GRINDERS. That's GRINDERS. Get this, if you do not turn a profit this week at Jock Market, they will cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app and Play stores or check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com and use code GRINDERS for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. All right, Daigle, give me a take as far as Trey Lance. Trey Lance is going to be unleashed in a game against Arizona. In theory, he should be asked. San Francisco wants to run the ball, but maybe they won't be allowed to. Maybe they'll be down here against Arizona. Arizona's good, and Lance, I presume, is cheap. What are you doing with Trey Lance this week?
It's obviously an awesome spot, an up-tempo game. I think the matchup is different than Justin Fields' first career start as a rookie on the road against, Cardinals defense, which also is median in terms of the pressure rate they receive, which is good since on a small sample, Lance's average just a little over 3 yards per attempt under pressure. Having said that, he came on the field for 30 minutes and scored 20 fantasy points last week, finished as the overall QB 13 on the week in just 2 quarters of play. I also think with no film on him, Cardinals are not going to be prepared at all. Having said that, we're watching injury reports because there will be a reason to fade him. Let's say if they don't have either Trent Williams or Alex Mack, their starting left tackle and center, that would be a utter disaster pretty much. So I'll be watching that. But overall, I think he's an awesome play. Awesome play.
5-7 on DK. And the actually guys are going to say, yeah, he did that in 20 minutes, but it was all because of one play and his receiver wasn't even covered.
It's a play that Garoppolo doesn't make because Garoppolo ain't hitting a wide open receiver.
Or Baker Mayfield. Hribar, your thoughts as far as Lance brings some other quarterbacks to the conversation?
Yeah, there's context to how he scored his points last week, but we do this with guys every week. There are blown coverages in the NFL. Things happen. What are you going to do, man? Did he play great? No, but he's also the kind of guy, he showed this in the preseason as well, that Lance still is very raw, but he can be streaky. And when he's streaky, he could do a lot of good things well. And that's kind of what we saw. That last drive of the game, I understand it's, in a little bit of prevent coverage, but they converted 2 4th downs. He's making plays, and that's what you like to see, just build up some confidence. Was it a great performance from the scout's eye if you're grading him out? No, he didn't play good at all, but Jimmy Garoppolo can't score fantasy points when he plays bad. Trey Lance can. So, that's what you have here at a cheap price. And you come with the rushing upside, you come with the Arizona side that has been elite. The Cardinals have 400 or more yards in all 4 games. The first time they've done that in franchise history. They're the first team since the 2013 Denver Broncos to do that. So, they're going to produce points and produce yards. There's going to be scoreboard chasing component to this game where they're going to have dropbacks. The 49ers are going to be able to run the ball effectively when they can. But I assume that if they are doing that too, it's going to be Lance as part of that as well. So, there's a lot of upside here. Plus, he's just within better hands than Justin Fields was, with Kyle Shanahan and that staff and surrounding talent compared to Matt Nagy before he let Bill Lazor do some under the scenes stuff last week. It's just gonna be different. He's gonna be in different hands. So I definitely have a little more confidence than we had with Justin Fields. On the other side though, too, you can just keep playing Kyler. What's
amazing.
Just keep playing Kyler. The 49ers, for their style of defense, they've come out this year and they've struggled against mobile quarterbacks again. Jalen Hurts had 82 yards against them. Russ had, 26 yards and a touchdown last week on the scramble. In 4 career games against the 49ers, Murray's had 34 rushing yards, 67 yards, 91 yards and a touchdown, and 75 yards. And that's just rushing. Last week he threw for a low of 8.4 yards per pass attempt against the Rams. So, this secondary is in a lot worse shape. The 49ers are. So, you just keep playing Kyler Murray. What's the reason not to? I have no problem.
Salary cap's the only reason, but yeah, he's phenomenal. If you can make it work, by all means. I see in the chat, Richie Smalls is talking about Tannehill. I don't know what to say about that because Brown and Julio, I want them to have competent receivers.
It looks like AJ Brown is it's trending good. He practiced today, which he never practiced on Wednesdays anyways, usually when he is healthy. Mm-hmm. So it's positive that he's already practicing today. Would be a great spot. I mean, you look at the passing yards over expectation the Jaguars have allowed to everybody. I mean, Tannehill's an interesting call because nobody's going to play Tannehill, man.
I don't think so.
It's also a nod to last year when we had so many leverage spots when we can double stack him with confidence and not play Derrick Henry. And it's sort of the same this week since Derrick Henry knows it. They increased his price even more on FanDuel, 10-4. Last week he got 24 points at 10-2. And like, you're not happy with 24 points if you pay 10-2 because you had to sacrifice someone else. Hopefully it wasn't Tyreek Hill since he ended lives on FanDuel last week. So it's just it's another good situation, but yeah, that's kind of that's the leverage we're talking about.
And in terms of plays run, I mean, this has to be high up there too. I mean, the Titans have they have a lot of plays run, but they also have a lot of handoffs. It's like the Chargers last year. It was like Anthony Lynn runs all these plays, and it's like, yeah, because they just ran for 3 yards to play before. you have to run more plays when you're getting 3 yards at a time. Derrick Henry's more efficient than that, but you get where I'm going with it. But this game should have a lot of tempo to it as well. The Jaguars play with a little bit of tempo, so. I don't hate this, the Tannehill call early in the week. He's not someone I really looked into, but that's because, like Dean said, we were looking at the wide receivers with A.J. Brown looking like he could play, is getting in trending up spot. We know Tannehill can run a little bit. I don't hate that right now.
Anything else as far as quarterbacks here, Daigle? Is there anything else you want to highlight? I mean, of course, we can mention a whole bunch, but we got to move on and talk about some running backs. And everybody's in play in theory, I suppose, but I don't want to talk about Ben Roethlisberger. Like, come on, we're not playing him.
I think we've talked about everyone in my pool this week.
Yeah. Is it a smaller pool than normal?
Dude, I've played Cousins 2 out of 4 weeks so far. Like, I can't keep going back to the well. Last week looked good. It is the line. And last week looked good because he did score on the opening drive. Now it turns out they only ran 1 drive each in the first quarter, which is not good. But yes, it is a good spot for the Lions. He just wasn't in. Sell me on Kirk Cousins among all these pools.
I mean, Lions.
Because the Lions, okay.
I mean, they're so bad. I mean, it's so bad. I mean, you just look at 28% of the completions against the Lions have already gone for 20 or more yards. League rate is 14%, so they're double that. Minnesota has a 9-1 passing touchdown to rushing touchdown split, and Dalvin Cook is already admittedly saying he's not 100%.
What is that?
So I mean that is something that's intriguing, and the Lions also are one of these teams that kind of at least keep it a game to at least let teams to keep to throw the ball a little bit. So I mean Cousins is probably going to be good because everyone's good against Lions. I mean if the Bears really wanted to throw a lot more in that game, like Justin Fields actually would have had a monster game.
You got a tight target tree as well with Minnesota. You basically know who to pair Cousins with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's segue to running back. And, I was going to ask about Tom Brady, but I think the more popular play this week, it's going to be Uncle Lenny, right? Like Uncle Lenny, he's got everything you want. And you want a big favorite at home, expected to get a pile of touches. I don't know what the situation is with, the guy, Bernard. I'm not sure if he's going to play, if he's not going to play. I'm not sure if that's going to matter much or not. It seems pretty clear that Lenny is the guy. He's pretty cheap as well, too. I'm not here to tell you he's great, but it doesn't matter. Opportunity. Getting on the field is the most important thing in the world, Daigle, and I think he's going to be in the field, and I think he's cheap, and he's facing a terrible team. I think we're playing some Lenny Fournette this week. I think it's happening.
I wouldn't mind fading him, famous last words, if Gio Bernard is healthy, though. Because remember, the Bucs still have the league's second highest pass player rate with the lead. They just weren't running the ball at all. And I know it was in the rare time they were in negative game script, but I'm still slightly worried that, if Gio plays the week prior before he was injured, he still had season highs in snaps and targets. So we want Lenny, not even for the carries, even though, 20 touches, 20 carries is really good. We want the pass catching work as well. And I just don't know if it would be there if Gio's fully healthy. I wonder if that was a changing of the guard moment and knowing they're going to throw. So I'd rather leverage that into Mike Evans or Antonio Brown, honestly, as we've seen Chris Godwin's target share decrease every week, 13, 12, 11% the past 3 games. I'd rather leverage that into a wide receiver play, honestly.
All right, your thoughts there, Hribar, as far as Fournette, and in the chat they're saying we skip talk about Henry. Like Henry's a great play. We could. What do you want to say about Henry?
We just got to running backs though. It's not like we're but yeah. I mean, do we need sold on the most expensive running back on the slate? The consensus.
He's a great play. You do with him what you want, and you can survive it if he puts up like 150 and 1. It's not a big deal, but he should romp.
I will say we talked about on DraftKings. Everyone's going to pay down for PUI and pay up for Henry. On FanDuel, it's a different argument. It's a better spot, but also like this week, there isn't, like we talked about, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. There are just less options outside of Devontae Adams we're truly confident in. So you could actually fit Derrick Henry with ease this week.
And well, we'll see what happens with CMC. And CMC is like 10K
That's
on
true.
FanDuel. That can absolutely, in the words of someone, overs it. It can flip the slate in its head potentially if we see CMC give it a go, especially on DK, where I think he's 8-7, which is egregious, assuming he's a full go.
I still think we'll see Damian Williams be the most popular guy. I mean, I think when we get down to it, outside of, Henry, but those guys in that mid tier, like if you like Fournette and if you like P. Ryan, I think you'll be able to pivot to them, because I think Williams is going to get there by the time this all comes around at the end of the week, because we've already seen
Khalil Herbert. Is that his not the coach?
I mean, Khalil Herbert's he was a guy that he was at Kansas. He transferred. He's a big splash play guy. In the 2020 collegiate season, he had the most yards per touch of any running back touched ball 100 times or more in 2020. So he's a big splash play guy. So there's a little bit of opportunity there. But I mean, with where Fields is at in his state of his progression, I mean, you're going to see a veteran back in there, and they're going to have to throw more than 17 times they did last week as road dogs. So you're going to get pass catching ability. You're going to get a team that it wants to run the football while they can with Damian Williams. He also has Fields starting, which helps him. In the RPO game, we saw what it did last week for those guys handling the football. I mean, I think he's, basically a smash play. And then you have the Raiders, who have been dreadful against running backs. I mean, 22nd in yards per carry allowed to running backs. They're 23rd in rushing points allowed per game. They are 19th in receiving points allowed per game to running backs. I mean, it's at 5.6 and 5.8, I believe, is prices on both sites. I mean, it's just way too cheap for a guy that could get you 20 catches, can't get scripted out of the game, so you can catch the football, is going to have the goal line carries. Is he on a good team? No. But that's really it. The only thing you can say is that he's a road dog, but he's going to be out there.
Jump in here, Daigle, some other running backs who added a conversation. I'll also throw your way. FanDuel, not amazing for James Robinson at 7.4. He's a true bell cow. I'm assuming Hyde's not going to be playing again. It's going to be a scratch going forward. I guess that's the case. We'll see. Or is that not?
Is he?
No, I'm hoping he plays and depresses Robinson's ownership, because that changing of the guard happened like 2 weeks before that. Robinson out-touched Hyde 35-10 in weeks 2 and 3 and out-targeted him 9-2. So, I understand he got more opportunity without Hyde, but even if he's active, Robinson's still an awesome play.
Okay, yeah, and he's especially on DK where he's 6K. That seems too cheap. FanDuel fine at 7.4, but 6K on DK, that's fabulous. Any other running backs you want to throw into the conversation? Who else should we spend a little time on? We've talked about Barkley already, talked about Elliott to some degree. Harris is popping for Pittsburgh. Is he going to still catch those 2-3 yard passes? Maybe they're worth 1 point on DK.
You better hope he falls in the end zone again like last week. That's all you're hoping for, because those touches ain't mattering. I wonder if Alvin Kamara will sneak in here without Tony Jones, because we can assume that Kamara is going to handle every single touch. I understand last week's 0 targets was not good, but just to have a career high in carries, and now we get a friendly Washington defense who's pretty much bottom in every single metric defensively, whether you look at Football Outsiders, EPA, whatever you want to name. And so I think it's a pretty good spot if we can sneak in Kamara here and just get every touch and hope for the best.
That's one of those, we talk about at the beginning of the season, we don't know everything we think we know. It was a consensus among most people that Washington, if not the best defense, a top 5 defense, top 10 defense, and they've been just horrendous so far.
They're atrocious. The Bucks have been atrocious too.
Well, those teams, it's because their secondaries are bad. If you look at the Bucks and even Washington, they're pretty good against the run still. They are still good against the runs. That's what's interesting. I mean, Washington's 8th in yards per carry allowed to running backs. They are giving up a lot of receiving points to running backs. The crazy thing about this is everything in that Washington game signals to Sean Payton, hey, you have to throw the football this game. You have to throw the football this game. Attack Washington through the air. Will he? He's been hiding this passing game for 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. And last week it came back and bit them. It's very fragile. It's so fragile to play the style of football the Saints are trying to play. Eventually they're going to have to throw the football and come out aggressive. I understand they don't have the full weaponry to really do it, but everything in this game is signaling, hey, open it up, please open it up. And we'll see if they finally do or not.
They have to design a screen for Kamara in the first series, just to get him a taste. And Like seriously, because like what was it, 8-9 guys on New Orleans caught a pass and not one of them named Alvin Kamara? That's just absurd. You're clearly your best weapon, and it's not hard to throw screen passes. Like,
it's so funny that though the consensus in the industry in like April was like, all right, with Drew Brees gone, like, not Kamara a little bit, not Kamara. If you look at his split stat, Drew Brees, and how many receptions he gets, he's going to get pegged, right? Like, and then Michael Thomas gets certain, like, bump up Kamara. He's going to get all the targets in the world. And then it's playing out initially like how everyone thought it would, and everyone's going off the rails now. But it's like, hey, stop being so knee-jerk reactionary and look at things from a top-down view. You were on this. You knew this. It's the same thing we're doing with Allen Robinson right now. People are trying to say that Justin Fields is bad for Allen Robinson. When Justin Fields got drafted, everyone's like, Allen Robinson's finally going to play his first real quarterback. He's going to have a talented quarterback. And everyone's like, I wish Andy Dalton was here to give value to Allen Robinson. Like, what world do you want Andy Dalton throwing to your wide receiver? Like, we want the better player playing quarterback. And it's, the fantasy analysts do some weird things sometimes. They're doing it with this Kamara thing. They're doing it with Allen Robinson. It's like, come on, man. Like you had the analysis right in front of your face and you jumped ship because the guy got hurt.
Whereas last week, though, I thought Kamara was a bad play against the Giants that well, it turned out better than it was, but I genuinely thought just the overall play volume was going to get sucked out. I probably actually will end up playing if I see he comes in like 5% or less this week.
I just hate that Taysom Hill is lurking, and not only is he lurking, but
that sucks too.
Yeah. It worked last week. I think it worked last week twice.
He's got 3 touchdowns the last 2 weeks. The last 2 games, he has 3 touchdowns.
You can't play Winston, not that you're going to, but you can't. And it really hurts. It hurts Kamara. Like, he's siphoning these touchdowns. He's getting these great touches on the 5-yard line. All right, we got some time for receivers. I do want to mention, I promised the people on Twitter today, retroactively to our show last week, if you guys talked about it or you guys listened to our show last week about Red Zone, the results are in, folks. The results are in, Hribar, Daigle.
We know them.
Brace yourself. It's a simple question. Do you like NFL Red Zone Channel? Pretty simple. Yes, duh. No, I enjoy commercials. Or just show me the results. And the answer is, according to 304 people, no, I enjoy commercials, 4.6%. I don't know if you guys voted or not. Yes, duh was 87%. And 8% people just want to see the results, which, some people like seeing results. There you go.
Well,
results.
That's all on y'all, because I got to enjoy the Vikings-Browns game this past week, and I know you didn't because they were never in the red zone. So your fault.
I did not enjoy anything Baker Mayfield did last week.
It wasn't enjoyable. I lied. It wasn't enjoyable, but I saw every step.
Begrudgingly. Hribar, talk to me about your favorite receivers we've not talked about just yet.
I mean, Justin Jefferson seems like a smash. We probably don't need to get in the weeds on that. Who else do we got? I like Devontae Parker.
Yep.
A lot of people are going to go back to Jalen Waddle, but he just doesn't have the requisite ceiling with the types of targets he gets. Whereas we can get some downfield targets from Parker. He actually, on terms of DK, I think he has the highest target share under 6K. I think it's him or Mooney. They're close, but I mean, he's played 90% of the snaps with Will Fuller out last week. Will Fuller's out again for multiple weeks. The Tampa Bay secondary is allowing 19.8 receptions per game to wide receivers. Parker's got 7 or more targets in every game. It's ugly. You don't want to watch Devontae Parker targets from Jacoby Brissett, but they're gonna be there. He's a run back in this game if you like Uncle Lenny. But definitely, you talked about the play volume in that game. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. Devontae Parker. It's gross. I didn't feel good to say it, but I do like him.
I have him written down as well. Actually, I kind of like him. Also, for the on DK, everyone under 6K, like Mooney, like you said, 30% target share the past 3 games. Like, now's the week. This is the week to leverage Allen Robinson. You're gonna hate yourself. You shouldn't watch the game, but like, I bet Mooney catches steam by Sunday morning, and everyone just plays him. I also like, because everyone mentioned Tannehill earlier. If we get AJ Brown without Julio Jones, that's pretty awesome. Like, even in the first 2 games, I understand the results weren't there, but AJ Brown had a 22% target share in both of those contests. And now he gets just a tremendous spot against Jacksonville. So I do like kind of sneaking AJ Brown in there as well as leverage off Derrick Henry if you go that route.
In the chat, they say Taysom Hill is a touchdown vulture. This year's Matt Asiata. Like, that's a name I've not thought about for years. That was the Minnesota guy, right? I think.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Shout out to Matt Asiata. Anything else? So yeah, Curtis Samuel is still a minimum on 3K. I don't know how much we'll need him. He ran like 35% as far as snaps last game.
He's just a blind play. Like, it's hard to, there's no objective analysis. It's just you saying he's 3K. Maybe he'll get more work.
He's definitely going to be like the number 1 cash game play on DK for sure.
Well, I think it's all prevalent based upon what information comes out from now until Sunday and how much value comes out and how much but like, it depends upon, but like he's the first guy you're going to go to at 3K if you're desperate for a 3K player and you're going to hold your nose and you're going to play him. Any other
what are the Jacksonville receivers? The Jacksonville receivers will probably be popular because every set of wide receivers that face the Titans is popular. You get the auto run back with Henry every week. I mean, you see even the Jets guys got there. Jamison Crowder and Corey Davis were smashes together. It's whoever plays the Titans, man. Like their like you just throw your wide receivers in the lineup. Chenault had a little bit of bump. I don't know how true it is because the one deep target was a broken play. So I don't want to put in context like this is going to be his ADOT going forward. It was kind of it could be just a standalone play, but the target volume is going to be there for him just having no Shark because Shark was getting so many targets in the offense. So, I mean, I do think that Chenault will be in play. And so you can go back to Marv, who had his one, first down game last week too, because we always play receivers against Titans.
So what you're saying is Tyron Johnson should be rostered over Curtis Samuel.
I don't want to make that decision. I don't want to be part of that.
Don't even think about it. Just don't make the decision.
T. Higgins is 5K on DK. If he goes, that's a really good price. And Waddle, another Dolphin that's pretty cheap on a comeback, on a run back, however you want to call it. You're not comfortable about that. You don't want any part of percent, but he is cheap. And in theory, they should be playing a little bit of catch up. Any tight ends that are worth mentioning? We got to step aside a couple minutes, obviously, guys. We're a little bit late as far as time. Hribar, who's on your tight end list besides Evan Ingram? We have highlighted for sure.
Well, I think Schultz will be popular. Definitely not Evan Ingram. Well, it's going to be interesting because how you play it. On this main slate, we've got a Waller and then like a clear gap. We've got Kittle, who played banged up. Plus, we have the Lance factor. Is Lance going to add volatility? Does he help or hurt Kittle? We don't know. Mark Andrews is on Monday night. Hawkinson now is dealing with an injury. Kyle Pitts is on London game. So then by default, the next guy is Noah Fant. Like that's never exciting, especially with Drew Lock. Then you've got Mike Gesicki, who's getting peppered of targets. And, if you look at Tampa Bay, there's going to be target volume here. We know that they're going to be throwing a lot. And Tampa Bay against tight ends, 9 catches for 65 yards to the Cowboys tight ends, then 7 for 88 to the Atlanta tight ends, 540 and 1 to Higbee, and then 7 catches for 46 yards and 2 touchdowns to the Patriots tight ends on Sunday night. So, it's gross, but hey, man, the passing volume is going to be there against Tampa. It always is. Gesicki's getting targets. He is a big guy in the red zone. So, that's kind of default, right? I think that's what we'll see. Is anyone going to play Ricky Seals-Jones?
That's what I was going to ask about.
He's got to be min.
That's more valuable on DK than it is on FanDuel, just the way you line up
because he's probably 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, I think he's 4 or 5 on FanDuel, I presume, but he's 2-5 on DK. And, obviously Thomas going on the IL. He could be useful in theory.
He played 100% of the snaps after Thomas left. Only had the 4 targets, but at 2-5.
Yeah.
I would play him before I played Evan Ingram.
Absolutely. Oh, it's not even close. It's literally not
close. Like legit. You think you'll outscore him?
Yeah, it's not even close.
How much more? I think Ingram's still only 3K on DK.
I do. I'll put my stamp on George Kittle over Darren Waller, though. I'm pretty confident in that. Just the fact that last week, even with an injury, ran around on 92% of the team's dropbacks, just 1 fewer target than Deebo Samuel. And when we mention volatility, it's seen so often as negative, but it can be positive as well. So taking a chance like on a Brandon Ayuk or whatever instead of Deebo Samuel, maybe it's just different with Trey Lance since we don't know since Deebo Samuel's 70-yard touchdown was a broken play. So overall, I just think taking shots with Lance for the volatility reason is actually good for tournaments.
Mm-hmm. Up against the clock. Got to get out of here. Do appreciate you guys watching. Do subscribe, turn on notifications. Listen to the show live. You can interact with us. It's good times. A lot of people listen to it on the playback. Before we step aside, as always, everyone knows who you guys are, but just remind them, Rich, where can they find your content?
Yeah, at Lurdies on Twitter, sharpfootballanalysis.com, weekly worksheet. Every Wednesday with my boys Dean and Daigle at 9 Eastern.
John?
At Daigle on Twitter. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com for my waiver wire column. You can read it Tuesday and Wednesday. It's written for everybody, even telling people to drop A.J. Dillon if they're in 14 leagues that only have A.J. Dillon as every player. And then a good football show on iTunes and Spotify.
That was Rich Hribar. That was John Daigle. That was producer Devin. This was the NFL Pick 6 show. I was Dean. Thanks for watching. We're out of here. Hold it.